Do you ever wake up completely depleted and exhausted? You're lacking that motivation to get out of bed. And it feels pretty ironic because this is the day you've been looking forward to. That day where you were going to get all these things done that you were not able to get done during the week. And this is a full day to yourself that you can use to catch up. And yet, you open your eyes and you just don't want to get out of bed. You don't want to do any of those things. Turns out I am having one of those days today. And instead of sticking to the scheduled episode idea I have decided to switch it up and instead talk to you about how I have been navigating this depleted and exhausting day so far. Hi, I am Raysa, a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And you are listening to Hello Trauma Brain, a podcast where I share my experiences living with complex PTSD. My hope is this podcast can help destigmatize mental health and provide support to anyone diagnosed with C-PTSD who thinks they might have it or has a loved one with this diagnosis. Quick reminder, I am not a licensed psychologist or mental health care professional, and this podcast is not meant to replace nor substitute the care of psychologists, other mental or medical health care professionals. If you think you might have complex PTSD or PTSD, please reach out to your primary care or mental health care provider. Any individuals or resources mentioned in this episode are not sponsoring Hello Trauma Brain. This episode may reference trauma or abuse, and listener discretion is advised. Remember, you can always pause or skip this episode at any time. And now, let's get back to the episode. Hello, dear survivors, and welcome to this episode of Hello Trauma Brain. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, quick check-in. I am feeling pretty low energy today. I have a little bit more energy than I had a few hours ago, but in terms of my check-in, I have been really thinking a lot about what courage means to me and bravery. And basically, this started a few days ago at the beginning of the week on Monday. So recently I switched therapists for individual therapy. And I have to say, like, one of the main reasons was the budget. And this new person, I'm still getting to know her, and we're still in like the baby stages of starting our work together. So I was having a session with my new therapist this week, and I forget why the podcast came up during the session, but she happened to say in response to that was a really brave thing to do. And I couldn't quite take it. And this has happened to me before. Other people have pointed out how brave I am for doing the podcast. And my response is usually something along the lines of, I don't feel brave. That doesn't feel brave to me. And the reason mainly is because I don't say who the abusers are. Like when I hear other content and people are saying who their abusers are, to me that is courageous. And I don't see myself as being brave because I fully don't disclose the identity of the abusers. So when it came up this week in therapy, and key difference there, my new therapist threw me a nugget of reflection that I've been thinking about for the past few days, which is, that black and white thinking. Like, to her, it sounded like that inner child way of seeing the world, like all or nothing. And that really resonated because it's either I say everything. I do a podcast where I say exactly who it is and exactly what they did, and I say their full name, or I don't say anything at all. And I am more in that gray area where I am speaking about having C-PTSD. I do speak out the fact that I am a trauma survivor. I have talked about examples and things that I have experienced. I did that as recently as last week's episode. And to take in that that's still courageous. It's I don't know what to do with that information. And this has been resurfacing since Monday when my session was a few times. So my chosen sister brought up how brave I am because I was doing last week's episode, which for me, it felt very big. And yesterday I am doing a gig, and I know one of the people there listens to the podcast. They tend to reach out after episodes. They've been very supportive of the podcast since it came out. And we're singing, and I basically, our phones are like in the podium together, and I look at her phone like light up, and in her Spotify widget I see the icon for my podcast. like like she was just listening to the episode before getting there, I guess. And quite frankly, it blew my mind when I saw it, because I've seen my podcast in my phone, like on the widget when I'm listening to it. But to see it in someone else's phone, that was a little wild. And I was, after the set was over, I was approaching her about it, and another colleague that was playing with us overheard us, and he was asking about the podcast. And that's one of those moments where I start giving a lot of warning labels on the podcast ahead of time, like, oh well, it's not a happy podcast, it's a trauma podcast, it's not for everybody. And it's chronic. I need to stop doing that. I feel like I don't need to do that, and a part of me knows it, but I don't realize it till like maybe half an hour after I already did it. And instead of like just answering the question and letting them make a decision of whether or not the podcast is right for them, I just go in with all these warnings, like warning, warning, warning. Be careful when you listen to it. Pace yourself. It can be heavy. Blah 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 blah. You know how it goes. And his response was, "Wow, that's a very vulnerable thing to do. That's very brave." There it was again. That is brave. And I still couldn't take it. Instead, I told him how, like, this week in therapy, this actually just came up, and I'm still struggling with taking in being seen as brave. And though I could make an episode on that, and I might later this season, I am going to wrap up the check-in with just saying that I'm still working on learning to see myself as courageous for doing this type of work, and I guess accept that I'm not quite there yet. Hopefully I get there soon. And yeah, I think that wraps up my check-in. And before I dive into what this week's episode is going to be, I do want to acknowledge that this episode is going to be coming out on October 10th, which happens to be Mental Health Awareness Day. And this podcast is all about creating mental health awareness. So I just want to invite you to help me spread the word about this content to anyone you know who could benefit from it. I think that speaking up about complex PTSD and PTSD and mental health in general is really important. And I will very briefly mention, this will be one of my illustration episodes, but for those of you that are fans of Heartstopper, like I am, it just came out this week, and I'm one episode from finishing the season already. I binged the living heck out of it very fast, and a part of me is like, oh man, I've waited so long to see what happens in the stories of these characters, and a part of me is like, I'm gonna have to wait a long time to find out what happens next. But one thing I do want to point out, given that it's Mental Health Awareness Day, if there is anything that I think should be required viewing, is season 3 of the show. Season 3 of the show dives into mental health for some of the characters involved in the show, and it does it in a beautiful way. It does it in a very conscientious way. It points out some of the challenges that are so real for people that are living with mental health and the challenges in the system. And what I really liked about how they handle this is they leave the viewer with some practical things they can do to help a loved one that is living with mental illness. And I invite you to definitely check it out, and not just on Mental Health Awareness Day. I feel like it is important to raise awareness about mental health every day, but given that there is a specific day where we are a little bit more aware and conscientious about it, I will take that opportunity to offer you that additional resource. And yes, an episode will come when I will talk a little bit more about how Heartstopper really nailed navigating mental illness as the actual person living with it, and also as a loved one, a friend, a partner, family member. And yeah. So before I keep diving into the Heartstopper rabbit hole, I am going to dive into what this week's episode is going to be, which is completely of the of the plan of scripted. I am just gonna come on here for a little bit to just share my experience with today. So I'll start with giving some context because I think that's important. So I'm not saying that exhaustion and depletion is just something that's unique to people with C-PTSD. I think that's just part of being a human being. We all experience those days where we're just running low. And I think the reason I want to talk about it is from the standpoint of what additional things happen when you're experiencing that normal human experience as someone who has CPTSD. So I am recording this on Sunday. So I just finished yesterday what was a streak of a few weekends in a row with gigs. And it's either been literally like a Saturday, Sunday gig that was very intense, and I was really expecting to be like down for the count. And it was interesting because that particular weekend I was expecting to feel like I am feeling today. I was like, I'm gonna be pretty much done for the rest of the week. Is gonna be a wipeout. And not only that, I navigated the next day and I went to work like I was just fine, and I went through the thing, and I've been releasing the podcast, and it was fine. I then had a few other weekends where I had like a Saturday gig. And I kept expecting for the Sunday to be like, I'm barely going to be functional. And I was trying to like be ahead of the schedule so I could take that Sunday off. And then I would be okay on the Sunday. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So then this weekend is rolling around. It's the last weekend of this streak of a few weekends in a row with gigs, along with my full-time job and along with podcasting too, which doesn't make it easier. But for some reason, the expectations shifted, and I thought today was going to be this really productive day. I was like, I'm going to get all this stuff done. I'm going to do the podcast. I'm going to do laundry. I'm going to take a walk on the trail and go to the grocery store. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to catch up on some mail and emails. And I really thought this was going to be one of the most productive Sundays I've had in a while. Well, and I woke up so late, I decided not to do coffee. I usually do a cup of coffee in the morning, just the one, because if I have two, my anxiety definitely gets ramped up a lot. And I thought, I woke up so late at this point, I don't think I'm going to need coffee. So I'm going about starting my day, and I have lunch, and I watch more Heartstopper. And I'm trying to get ready to record and like go about my idea that I had for the podcast, which probably will be next week's episode. And all of a sudden it just hits me like a ton of bricks. I feel exhausted. And I'm pretty much falling asleep on the couch. And I am just like thinking to myself, how the hell am I going to do this episode? There's some... Like that episode is I want to be mindful about it, and I want to do a bit of an outline. There's some things I don't want to forget, and just the thought of doing all that mental work alone was like wiping me out. And I want to say also, I feel like my OCD has been a lot more intense in the past few days. So I'm already like, I don't think I realized it until then, but I was already feeling pretty depleted from the OCD ramp up I've had recently, and I just feel wiped out. And here's where I want to throw the CPTSD add-on. Already the OCD stuff that I have is related to my CPTSD. So my CPTSD already was depleting a lot of my mental resources, and then combined to that, the fact that I was exhausted from working late last night, essentially, I think that ramped up my exhaustion even more. And then I'm going to add on even more CPTSD stuff, which looks like this. And now I'm feeling exhausted and depleted, right? Here's where the inner critic comes in. So something that goes along with having complex PTSD is having this really toxic inner critic inside of you. And this voice treats you like shit. It's what causes that feeling of, I'm a bad person. I am a horrible, horrible human being because I shouldn't be tired right now. I should be doing this stuff, and I should be doing the podcast, and I should be doing the laundry, and it's already 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And you just go into this self-deprecation judgment mode. It can be pretty harsh. Now, with healing and becoming more aware that the inner critic is even a thing, it can become very helpful, because when it starts happening, you can start noticing that it's happening too. And there's sometimes it's really hard to stop it, and sometimes, like today, I was able to be like, okay, I can feel the part of me that wants to creep up and start judging me and berating me for this, and push me to still do the podcast and navigate this from I need to be productive, so I'm going to push it down and keep going. I could feel that. I can't explain it. Cannot explain it. But there was a moment there. Like I could feel all that coming up, and that's usually how I would navigate things, especially before I started healing and before I even knew that I had C-PTSD. And this part of myself came up and goes, what if we just take a nap? Which, for an inner critic, is like the worst idea on the planet, right? Like, are you kidding me? Who has time to take a nap? You just slept till like almost noon today. You really want to go ahead and take a nap? Are you crazy? Right? But that part of me came up and was like, I think we need a nap. And I think I'm going to take a nap. So I did. And here's the thing with my naps. This happens every time. I go into the nap thinking it's going to be a 20-minute nap, and before I know it, I have snoozed my way into a 2-hour nap. Now, I think what happened when I went to take the nap is also C-PTSD related. So I am in the couch, right, about to fall asleep, like I cannot keep my eyes open. I finally go, I'm going to go ahead and take a nap. I can't function like this, and it's going to be okay. And if we do laundry tomorrow, that's going to be okay. And it's okay. Lay down, and all of a sudden my brain cannot shut down. Now I'm awake. Now I'm alert. Now I'm trying to nap, and instead I'm like, let's check Instagram and see if anything happened there. Let's maybe we can start replying to the messages I have fallen behind on. And I am literally like doing a back and forth of like grabbing my phone, unlocking it. Nope, I'm gonna take a nap. Put the phone down. And I keep like trying to like picture, like it's almost like me trying to explain to my inner kiddo, like, I know you want to instead get a dopamine hit from the social media so we can get up and do the stuff, but we're gonna really take a nap because we need a nap right now. We need to rest. And then a part of me was like, well, how about we get that cup of coffee? I haven't had it yet, and it will surely wake me up. And it's like, no, we're gonna do it the natural way. I am going to take this nap. We're gonna take time for ourselves. Instead of pushing and being productive and doing the thing, we are going to take a nap right now. And I took the nap, and I woke up from the nap later. So this is usually when my inner critic would be like, see, this is why I told you not to take the fucking nap. Now we're really behind. Now we're probably not going to be able to do the podcast at all. Well done. That's how that would go. Woke up late. I then thought to myself, what if instead of going to the trail, we take a short walk around the neighborhood here? Still the same sun, still the concept of being outside. What if, though we know we need almond milk because we're running low, there's still some in there. I can still make coffee tomorrow morning with what I have, and we go tomorrow. And we do the laundry maybe later today or tomorrow. And I don't know, there was a moment there where even though I could recognize that is the time when the inner critic comes in and just lets me have it, I kept also experiencing this. It's like a new voice. That's really what it feels like. It's like a newer voice that has been coming out little by little as I heal more and more. And that new voice just has a lot of compassion for me and goes, how about we make the episode about this, about the experience of navigating exhaustion and depletion today. Instead of, oh, I still haven't even done the outline for the episode and I have to do some research and I have to do this and I have to do that. And I don't even know if I have the mental capacity to talk about what I wanted to talk about. And instead of doing all that, just literally come in front of the microphone and make a shorter episode about what's really happening. And it requires no extra mental bandwidth and no research and no extra anything. Just literally coming on and making something simple. And how about we let that be good enough? Because I had a really tough week. I didn't realize how tough my week was until I experienced the exhaustion today. And I started looking back at my week and thought, damn, this week was rough. I don't think I realized it until today, but I have been pretty tired. In the past few days, it's been really hard to focus on things. I have been just feeling the OCD just kicking my bum. And I'm also trying new tools to help with that. And those take mental bandwidth to do them, because it's almost like, and I'll talk about that tool in another episode, but basically the whole concept of the tool that I'm using is almost like letting the feeling just become intense and just letting it and not doing the ritual. And that takes a lot of mental bandwidth, because usually the ritual like gets the charge to come down. And in this new tool that I've been using, I'm letting the charge just get as big as it can, and then it starts coming down. But letting it get big takes a lot of bandwidth. So OCD ramping up, me using a tool that ramps up the feelings that OCD are already ramping up. Just navigating that this week I had a lot of stuff going on early in the morning. So like I was waking up earlier than usual a few days in a row. Yeah, I feel like I didn't quite realize how much I was wearing myself down. And then on top of that, my full-time job. And then on top of that, I had a gig yesterday. That was a lot of hours that I put into that, getting home late. And I've been podcasting on top of all this. Yeah, it got to me. It got to me today. That's really what it feels like. I think the most important part of what I'm sitting with today is learning to change plans, learning to make accommodations for myself. That's it. Sometimes I get really caught up with it needs to be a certain way and it needs to be in this schedule. And if it doesn't happen, in the past, it would be that feeling of I'm a bad person now. I failed. And to accept that, like, no, I'm not a bad person and I didn't fail. I just woke up really depleted and exhausted today. So we're going to change things around to accommodate for how Raysa feels today. And that's allowed. I can't tell you how I feel about that right now because I feel a little numb. I can feel the numbness kind of washing over me today. Usually like when I podcast, I'm a little bit more alert and I definitely can take a little bit more of how I feel with how I say things. And right now it almost feels like I'm talking, but it's not me. It's like somebody else who's like in front of the microphone right now. And I wonder how I'm going to feel about this episode as I hear it back. Because I feel like a part of me cognitively recognizes that I'm saying some really important things that I really need to hear. And then my emotions are just kind of shut down right now. I think it's just something that's coming with the realm of being so exhausted and depleted. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Like when I'm having my emotions and I'm feeling my emotions, it can be draining. It's very intense for me to feel. I do consider myself a highly sensitive person, and it's a brilliant strategy. I'll give it to my body and my and my emotions and my brain and the whole shebang. It's quite brilliant to kind of null out the emotions so I don't get even more depleted than I already am. But a part of me, I don't know. I would like to be able to feel a little bit more now that I am able to feel. And I'm gonna sit with it, and I'm not gonna judge myself, and I'm going to go back to what I want to leave you with this week, which is having self-compassion. I feel as a trauma survivor that having self-compassion is extremely hard. I often have to think about my inner child and really think about, treating myself in the same way I would treat a kid. And that tends to be very helpful for me. And when I started this healing journey, I definitely was struggling with self-compassion massively. I feel like the more I've done this work, the more I find it's very subtle. There's these subtle ways in which it creeps up. Like today, it definitely did. I could recognize that this is about the time when the inner critic would be coming in, and instead to notice this voice that was very gentle, and it was just encouraging me to take care of myself. Once I started navigating today as a day where I just had to engage in more self-care, because that is where I was at, and that is what I need right now. Once I saw it that way, it became easier to let go of the expectation that I needed to get a lot more done, because today was quote unquote the day to take in that more Sundays will come, that I can break things down and get a little bit done today, still not the whole thing, and that's okay. I'm still recording the episode. I'm gonna give that to myself. I'm still in front of the microphone. And that was another thing that helped me take the nap. I all of a sudden realized, wait a second, I have been literally for the past few weeks treating Sunday like it was going to be recovery day, my recovery day. And then I would wake up feeling pretty charged up and alert, and I would just make it a productive day. And to remind myself, wait a second, this is supposed to be recovery day. I just gigged yesterday. This is not supposed to be productive day. Let's go back to that. Once I saw it that way, it made it easier for me to have that compassion and to not punish myself for not getting all these things done and making today a productive Sunday. I'm also sitting with the fact that all the things on my list, though they do need to get done, they're not emergencies. Like I can still navigate today, and I can still start my week, and it's going to be okay. And it's interesting. Ever since I took the nap, I actually have had extra energy, and that's the only reason I'm in front of the microphone. I did for a bit consider, if I wake up from that nap and I'm not feeling it, maybe we don't record the episode on Sunday. Maybe we record it tomorrow and we deal with it. But what really pushed me to sit here was the fact that I do know I have a few things going on early in the week that are already cutting into some of the editing time for the podcast. So I don't know, the thought of like, oh, if I don't record it, I was already going to be editing, with less time. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I could feel the inner critic that was going to come if I did not record something today. And it's interesting. I came into this thinking I'm going to record maybe like a 10-minute episode. And right now, like GarageBand says, I am 39 minutes into talking and recording something. Granted, there's a lot of things that are going to get cut down because I just kept tripping over my words. And I know this is going to come way down than the 39 minutes I'm in. But it's interesting because I thought 10 minutes, and all of a sudden I came on here and I just kept going. Ain't it funny how it works? Couldn't even picture myself coming in front of the microphone a few hours ago, and here I am almost 40 minutes in. Okay. I think I talked enough about this today. How I plan to navigate the rest of my day is I am going to try to get outside, even if it's for like 15 minutes. And reason being, it's been pretty rainy in my area for a while, and I have been coming home. So at this point where I live, we're heading towards shorter days, and it gets darker faster. And that is one thing I don't like about that fall into winter transition, because sometimes if I have stuff going on after work, by the time I get home it's just dark and I can't go walk. And I really, really want to get out there because it happens to be a really nice sunny day, beautiful temperature, which at this point we have only a few few days left with these type of temperatures. Things are gonna start getting colder and colder as the fall continues on, and yeah, I that's another thing I'll throw into the pile for anyone here who is looking for tools for CPTSD. During days like this, I am very tempted to just hermit my way in my apartment and not go outside and not really engage out there. And I don't think I ever take a walk and regret taking a walk. I don't know, there might be like a point during the walk if like an insect comes near me or flies into my face or something where I go, what the hell? And I really think I shouldn't be out here. But it's very brief. I tend to let go of it very quickly because there's so much benefit that I get from walking. Part of it is involving bilateral stimulation. And for anyone who's not familiar with that term, my understanding is basically like using like something that involves left and right, like stimulating the left and right side of your brain. So walking, if you're walking and you have legs and you have your left and right leg, doing that alternating motion. And if you have arms that this is available to you, like even swinging your arms, that still stimulates like a left and right motion. That's again the whole purpose of bilateral stimulation is to stimulate the left and right side of your brain. It helps process things if the whole thing is activated and engaging. Walking, riding a bike, if you are typing in your computer with both hands, like anything like that, is kind of achieving that goal. And yeah, I kind of want to go out there and get some nice, healthy, natural vitamin D. So I feel like I need it. Like if I stay inside all day here, the depletion is going to eat up at me a little bit more. And yeah, I wish me luck. I think it's gonna be a good thing for me. I'm gonna stick to it. I'm gonna try it out, and I'm hoping that it will help perhaps shift a little bit of how the rest of my day is gonna look like. Here's the thing, and I cannot say this enough. I'm not fully healed, right? So I still feel a little bit of the judgment. I still feel the part of me that is like, I should be getting more done today. And I think maybe that's the part of me that's trying to at least get a walk so I can say I got a walk done. And I think there is a part of me, I don't think, there is a part of me that is hoping the walk will give me some energy so I can get more stuff done tonight, maybe. And I can honor that part is still there. That part is not going to fully go away. I don't know if the inner critic ever goes away fully. But I'm also going to hold the possibility that I go for a walk and maybe my energy level doesn't improve a lot more. And even if it does, I can still choose not to get 50,000 things done tonight. And I can still honor that today is recovery day and I need to rest so I can have more energy for the week instead of pushing myself, which would end up depleting me more and causing for me to start the week feeling even more exhausted. Like I definitely do not want to start my Monday feeling like hell and exhausted. I definitely rather be exhausted on a day off when I can actually rest and take a nap and take it easy than to be exhausted as I'm supposed to be working and doing all these other things that I have to do this week. So yeah, that's the end of that. I hope that you're finding this reflection helpful. And if you resonate with this in any way, feel free to reach out to me and let me know. I feel like when I'm going through this, I kind of get caught up and like, am I the only person experiencing this? And part of me knows I'm not, but a part of me also doesn't know that I'm not, if that makes any sense. And that's it for this depleted and exhausted podcast host. In this week's healing invitation, I want to offer you a few things to reflect about. Next time you have a day when you are feeling depleted and or exhausted, notice how you treat yourself. Are you trying to push yourself to be productive? Do you slow down or force yourself to go even faster? Are you able to find self-compassion? I often find helpful imagining a young version of myself. If a kid under your care was exhausted and depleted, would you push them that hard? starting to find ways to learn how to be compassionate towards ourselves can be a game changer when healing trauma. Please let me know how this week's healing invitation goes if you choose to accept it. Before we wrap up this episode, all music and production is courtesy of yours truly. Also, I want to share a few ways you can help support this podcast. You can subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or the platform you are using to listen. Share this episode with anyone you think can benefit from this content. Follow Hello Trauma Brain on Instagram, subscribe to the Hello Trauma Brain YouTube channel, like this video, and hit the notification bell to be the first to know when I post a new episode. And you can make a donation by getting me a coffee. No worries, all links will be provided in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. I wish you the best as you navigate days of depletion and exhaustion with more self-compassion. It is time for our farewell affirmations. I invite you to repeat after me. I welcome the belief that I am enough. I am lovable. And I deserve to heal. I wish you a gentle week and thank you for your presence.